Hey everybody, welcome back to part 2 of painting a Stormcast Eternal Liberator. In part 1 we went over the base colours where we applied the gold, the blue, the pink, the silver. As I covered in the previous video, some of the colours that are currently on the model seem a bit washed out, and that's fine. Some painters out there prefer to go with the to borrow the phrase, 2 thin coats or 2 lighter coats, or however many coats they want to apply on before they start applying washes and what have you. I just like to go with, simple. One medium coat, one light to medium coat, apply the washes, and then apply my inks. Apply my washes, and then go over for the layers, like re-go over with the original colour. But in this video, we're just going to apply the washes. We'll start with the shield on the reverse side of it first. Then we can put that down, go to the model, and then once we've actually got the model done, we'll go to the fascia of the shield, because by that point, the reverse should be nice and dry. So without further ado, let's get underway. I'll just place the model there for a second. As I think I might have mentioned in a previous video, for the gold, I'll be starting with Reikland Flesh Shade. Others use different colours. I just like it because it gives a nice warm texture to the gold. I quite like that in this particular gold approach. I wouldn't use it for all gold and all models, but certainly for Liberators, or if I was to paint a Custodian, for example, in Warhammer 40,000, I'd absolutely use Reikland Flesh Shade. It gives it that nice warm texture to the metal itself. If I was going for like a colder gold, I might use, I don't know, something else, Agrax Earthshade perhaps, or I might just go straight in with like a Lone Oil or something, just something that will give it depth, certainly. But for these, they're regarded as the part of order in the mythos of Warhammer Age of Sigmar. Some people might regard them as goodies, others might not. Is there such a thing as goodies in the various Warhammer franchises? I have no idea. Probably not. But I like that, bright, golden, warm feel to the gold, and that's why I've gone with that. So that's the gold applied to the shield. I'll come back to the blue when I get around to the blue on the main model itself. I'll give the Reikland Flesh Shade a chance to dry before we start messing around with linking inks and what have you. So let's go to the model itself. You'll notice I'm painting directly from the pot. Some people prefer to water down the washes, others don't. I'm one that doesn't feel a need to. Again, if for whatever reason you're using these videos as a how-to, then first of all, can't quite say it enough, there are probably better videos to go out and find on how to do this kind of thing. This is, after all, just something I'm doing for me to be able to look back in the future to say, ooh, what I did, and it's a nice relaxing thing to watch, I guess. I certainly get some enjoyment from watching videos where other people are painting or crafting or, whatever they're doing, where it's minute detail and they're just taking their time. Again, as I said in the first video, and indeed my test video before that, I do tend to ramble on. So if you're not a fan of people rambling on, this might not be the video for you. If I get enough comments, let's roll that back. If I get enough viewers, and then enough of my viewers put enough comments in saying, just come out of shot with that, sorry folks. If enough people say, we don't like the rambling, can you tone it down? I will try and look into that, but then similarly, that's just my personality type. I'm, as I'm sure any of my brothers and my sister will say, an extrovert. First to admit it. My process is to reflect, to talk, to think aloud, to use various coaching metaphors. Not metaphors, but think aloud is a sports coaching educational tool. It's very good. I like to think aloud even when I'm not recording. I will happily sit there and talk to myself. If there are any psychiatrists watching this, I imagine they'll be able to unpick that to their heart's content. I just quite like it. You know, it's my process. I'm aware that the angle I've got the camera at isn't great, so I'll see how it goes, but I may pause the action, reset up the rig, and come back to this. I might not. We'll see how it goes. Mostly in shot still, so it's not the end of the world. I might just fudge the camera to the right a little bit. That's better. That's more in shot, I think. Yeah. My phone's telling me I've only got so much time to do with this video. I have to start removing older videos and what have you. So this video, whether I like it or not, it is telling me, my phone is telling me, is going to be 28 minutes long. It might be, might be a part 3 to this video of me applying inks and washes and what have you. We'll see how fast I can get this done. The first video only took me an hour to get all of the base colours applied. And this part of the process shouldn't take as long as that. Shouldn't. We shall see. But anyway, I'm once again rambling. Even for me, I'm rambling. I shall continue to talk about my process. So as I said, I apply my washes, my inks, whatever you want to call them, shades, directly to the model from the pot. I feel that the washes themselves are watered down sufficiently for my liking. I'm aware that people do prefer to water them down with either lime medium or another base mixture, or just water, for example. I have done that in previous models, certainly for the Lion, where I wanted more subtle washes, where I was doing some wet blending, I would use the lime medium. But as this is just a base frontline model, you know, like, I'm not too fussed about the subtlety of shade, if you will. When I get around to painting up the leaders, well, I've already painted up the Lord Relictor, but when I get around to painting up the Lord Castellant, I showed everyone in the previous video that he's still in his blister at the moment. I will almost certainly take more time with that one. There'll be a much longer series of videos. Oh, that's a bit thick even for my like. Here's a nice example of a mistake being made in real life. If you do apply, I'll come back to my original point, if you do apply too much wash on a model, it's a water-based thing, just spread it out. It's not the best approach, I'll be the first to admit it. You should try and be neat, even at this stage, but because of the liquid, you know, properties of the washes, they're quite forgiving when it comes to spreading them out, if you will. Some folks actually like to go real thick with the washes and deliberately go with that thickness. It really depends on, now I'm getting back to my original point of how subtle you want to be. I don't want to be too subtle with this model, but I also don't want to be too heavy. I think there I've got about a nice balance there. I've just got to get that lower greaves on his legs, just give them another touch up. But I think I've got a nice mixing there. Yeah, it's not too heavy at any point, it's not too light. It's given that depth and warmth to the gold. I think I've covered all the areas. I'm sure if I've missed any area, when I look back on the model outside of this video, I will do so. But yeah, I think I've caught all the gold there on the actual model itself. So let's just go back to the shield and we'll go to the fascia itself. There's a bit more gold on this side of it on the front, and that's fine. So let's just load up our brush, get a nice blob of ink on there. And again, you'll notice I've gone quite heavy with it. It's not the end of the world if I put a bit too much on. Remember, as I was saying in the previous video, how I go through these two stages of base colours then washes is I put a fairly light coat on initially, on the base coat, then put my wash on place, and then I go over everything in the original base coat anyway. I think some folks over at G-Dubs and other painting channels do the same. I don't know. It's all personal preference, isn't it, really? It's what works for you. But that works for me. It's because the detail on these models are quite heavy and thick, and I covered that in the previous video as well. you can let the model do the work for you. Oh, it sounds a tad cliche, that, but it's not untrue. Just because something's a cliche doesn't mean it's untrue. But yeah. Anyway, again, I'm rambling. So let's go back to the reverse of the shield. And we're now going to apply the Drakenhof Nightshade. As I said in the previous video, this is a very, very heavily pigmented shade colour. It's great. I love it. If you do decide to use it, I would recommend you use it sparingly. Again, unless you're going for a very deep, dark wash on your model, like your Night Lords, for example, they might require a less subtle touch, if you will. But it's such a thick, pigmented shade. You can apply it sparingly to great effect. As you can see, I mean, just with that little amount I've just applied there, it's gone into all the nooks and crannies, and oof, you know, it does that job for you. Good Lord, it does that job for you. I'm just going out a shot there, sorry folks. I'll just put it around the rim here, just outside of the bezel? I don't know what the phrase is. The gold bit. And there you go. Very light touch, but it's done the job. So I'll move back now to the model proper itself. Before I do, I'll just load up my brush. And as we've seen, there aren't too many bits on this model which are blue. You have like the Tarouge, the tabard, the shoulder plates, the reverse of the tabard. And again, because it's such a thick paint, you can apply it quite sparingly. And as I was saying in the previous video, how I made a few mistakes with the gold onto the blue, it's not the end of the world, because as you can see, this is covering up a whole raft of mistakes. You know, and I'm applying it extremely lightly. It's such a thick and heavy wash, but it's a great wash to use. I actually prefer this to like Null Oil, and I know there are other washes out there, but Null Oil is quite oily, almost. I'm giving it its name. But even when you apply it, it sits in thick. Drakenhof Nightshade, and this is just my observations, I find it also sits in quite thick into the nooks and crannies, but it has a certain, it's going to sound awfully pretentious, but a lightness to its texture. Probably want a better phrase than that, really, but it feels it spreads better. You know, the same amount of paint you put on your brush as you would versus Null Oil. Null Oil is quite heavy. It does the job. It gets into all the nooks and crannies. Good Lord, does it? But it's a bit of a bugger. Excuse my language. If you don't particularly want it settling into all the nooks and crannies. Now, I am actually going to use Nightshade on the blue. Sorry, on the chainmail, as I'm doing now. Reason being, I quite like that effect on the chainmail. That kind of, when I come around to layering it up, obviously the silver will be reapplied to it, and the silver will lift it again. But I like that feeling, that like the old high elves of old, you know, in the old Warhammer. You know, we would not famously, but a lot of painters would use the same technique of applying blue rather than a Null Oil to add depth to the chainmail. It's just it's a variation. It's a variation on a theme. When I reapply the layers to the silver will lift it naturally, but it's that nice blue shading. It just complements the rest of it. Yeah. But there we go. That's the blue applied. Nice and quick, nice and easy. Let's go back to the shield now. We're going to go to the fascia, the front of it. And at this point, I'm not going to stick the shield on, but I'm certainly going to put it, rest it onto the model itself. Sorry, folks, I'm out of shot again there, sorry. Because again, the reverse side is still a bit damp still. I don't want to start getting fingerprints all over the model. And also, it just gives me that little extra control. You know, if it's on the model, it means I can control the flow of the ink far better. As I said, Drakenhof Nightshade is a very heavily pigmented ink. I don't want it particularly going on the gold. It's not the end of the world if it does, but I prefer to avoid it. Again, think neat when you can. Neat's probably the wrong. Be careful. At the end of the day, it's not the end of the world if you do go over into the gold, because the gold layer will go over that, but Drakenhof Nightshade gets everywhere. Good Lord, it gets everywhere. And it gets into all those nooks and crannies, which is great when you want it to do that. But if it goes into a nook and cranny you don't want it in, getting it back out again. Good luck. You may want to just repaint. But there you go, that's quite nice. Yeah, quite like that. And then there's 2 more washes to apply. We've got, our next one is, for this Screamer Pink, I apply Carroburg Crimson. I think G-Dubs use a different one, I'm not sure. I don't know, but that's the one I like. It's quite a heavy, dense ink wash, but it really sets into the recesses of the handle tape of their weapons. And when we come around to, oh, shield's falling off. When we come around to lifting the hammer tape later on, of the handles, which will do like a sequence of lighter and lighter pinks, the deep dark recesses of the Crimson Carroburg will really contrast nicely with those. So there you go. That's the Crimson Carroburg and the handle tape. And then last but by no means least, Null Oil. I know I said earlier on it's quite it's quite viscous as inks go. At least I find it to be so. But please don't, mistake that for I don't like the stuff. I love Null Oil. I think it's a great ink. It's just because it is so heavy. Please use it sparingly. We've all spilt at least 1 pot of Null Oil in our paint station before, and as anyone who has ever done that, and as I'm sure you'll find out, is oof, it gets everywhere and it stains thick and heavy. You can wash it off. I indeed have washed it off, but it's great for weapons, for metal things like I am doing with the hammerhead. As you can see, it sinks into all the recesses. I'll just put my hand on it so you can get a better focus. But yeah, it does that job. But as you can see, it pools quite heavily as well. Now you want that for things like hammerheads, because when we come to apply the layers to lift the hammerhead later on, you want that stark contrast. You wouldn't necessarily want it for the chainmail. Some might. Indeed, as you're watching this, you may be screaming at the screen saying, "No, you're wrong." You're right entirely. But I personally prefer to use Null Oil sparingly. The only other parts I'm going to apply it for are where I've already applied the black, to the undersuit, to give the undersuit that real depth. And of course his belt, and the scabbard of his gladius. But again, it's going to be very sparingly applied because I don't want it to go over the gold necessarily. I mean, given it's a miniature and it's rank and file, I'm going to make a few slip-ups here and there, and that's fine. It's not the end of the world. But as you can see, just by adding this tiny layer of Null Oil, it's such a really thick paint, really oily and really. I mean, it's great. I love Null Oil for what I want it to do. It does it. It does it well, but. Slightest slide of Null Oil. To quote the ever famous Bob Ross, it will ruin your day. If you spill Null Oil, or if you go over a part of a model that you don't want Null Oil on, yeah, your brush is almost certainly in that water pot right away, and you're seeking to wash that out as fast as you can, and you're not always going to do it with Null Oil. But I think I've caught it all there. I think I've managed to capture it quite nicely, and with relatively little spillover. I've no doubt gone over some, but there we go. That is the model. I have all of its shades applied to it, all its washes, inks, etc., etc. For obvious reasons, I am now going to have to wait for the model to dry. Let me just reattach the shield temporarily. But there you go. As I said in the first video, or at least the video prior to this one, even though I'd applied the paints quite thinly, applying the washes as I intended to, and as I have done, it really lends that body to the thinner washes. So yes, alright, on the shield, for example, you can tell on the left-hand side here, it is quite dark. The pigmentation of the Kantor blue is quite heavy compared to the right-hand side where it's lighter, and that's fine. The Drakenhof Nightshade is nicely sank into all the recesses as I wanted to, so when I reapply the Kantor blue for the layer effect, you won't notice. And same with the gold, really. The actual Reikland Flesh shade is actually a lot more forgiving on the gold than the Drakenhof Nightshade is on the Kantor, because Reikland Flesh shade is a very deep pigment, but it's very warm, and it did exactly what I wanted to do. I can see parts where it's like, oh yeah, it's a bit washed out the gold, But for the most part, yeah, I'm happy with that. So there we go, folks. That's painting a Stormcast Eternal Part 2 video, complete. A bit short and sweet compared to the first one. Once again, if you've liked this video, or if you've watched this, stumbled across this video accident and you liked it, please hit that like button, and dare I ask for subscriptions. Your call, your journey. If you haven't enjoyed it, that's fair enough too. And again, if you'd like to make any comments in the video, please do so. If you'd like to see anything else, or if you'd like me to go over anything again in a future video, I will do. I will stress this is not a series of how-to videos, it's just me painting my videos and enjoying that. But for those who have liked and subscribed to the channel, thank you very much. And people who've just enjoyed the video, or at least those who viewed the video, I hope you've enjoyed it. I know I've thoroughly enjoyed making them, and I can hope to continue to make more. And that's all. Thank you for watching. Ta-ta!